what this guy's doing right here. Oh, okay. Interesting. Hello.
Citizen Erickson in the house.
How are you?
I'm doing well today, and how are you?
Good, thank you.
I think it's a good day to discuss Wilmington's Live. What do you think, John?
Is that this right there?
That'd be just fun. Yeah, that'll work.
I gotta tell you something.
Yeah.
I've had all kinds of variations on cameras, upside down, outside like this.
Yeah.
And then other times the camera's facing that way and I'm talking over here. Would you believe that?
Yeah.
Vice versa. Especially in the mountains, I mean,
Yeah.
surroundings, it's kind of. But there's a lot of videos and I don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the hell are you talking
Well,
about?
that's the start of art. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, do you really think like guys like Picasso and Edward Munch, did they really know what they were making? They just started to create, and then I think the value was assigned by both them and of course the people that viewed it. You know?
Yeah.
Well, let me set you up a chair here, John. I got some fire started because it was kind of a cold wind out there. So, grab a seat and be comfortable.
This is the first time in weeks I haven't actually no high whatsoever. Just kind of
Oh,
here from the earth.
all right.
I was at Ruth's house yesterday, helping Austin a little bit. And she's watching TV and everything. And
Are they being careful in the house?
yeah.
Taking it seriously? Because there's knuckleheads that aren't. You know.
You told me about the other guy that used to work here. Yeah.
Well, Jason, yeah, doesn't. It's just people that don't care about their health, of which there are many. I don't think it's going to make them start caring about their health. So this will, probably thin the herd in some ways.
Think so?
Oh yeah, it's no doubt.
I think it's a good thing for America in a way because we're kind of lethargic.
I think it's a really good thing for us. The entire move towards the just-in-time corporate strategy. People 20 years ago were going, this is not a good idea if something goes wrong. It's a good idea if everything moves around. It's a good idea on a sunny day. But how many sunny days can you bank on? Well, I think we've had more than our share of sunny days already. And now I think, vital things really should be held in reserve. And Americans are going to get used to UBI. And that's pretty cool, because, remember, we've been talking about
What
this.
took this to do it?
It took this to do it, exactly. So,
And also one other thing, Richard, we finally learned that we're not that far away from the world. We've had that for how long? We've had that our whole lives, basically, right? You're over there.
yeah, absolutely.
I know it sounds, I don't sound too gloating about it, but just like we need.
No. I mean, I think it's very valuable. I think it also we need to bring up topics like the right to travel. One of the reasons that this didn't happen earlier is that plane tickets used to be pretty fucking expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in the 70s, going over there, and it was like $700-800, to get over there and back, and that was a lot of money when minimum wage was $2. Well, guess what? The tickets are still like $700 or $800, and that money has been thinned out 60 or 70%. So I think the transmission was a lot lower, and they just didn't provide air service to a lot of places. There wasn't any air travel in and out of China in the 70s, or Africa. I mean, almost none. To do so. Well, now, this is what happens. You allow a disease to spread. The movie 12 Monkeys, I think, was really good at really bringing that up, saying, all you really need is planes to spread diseases, and that needs to be tied. And in my mind, man, don't bail out the air industry. It was bloated and unnecessary to begin with. So much of what happens. I mean, business travel in this day and age, give me a break. You could do that on Skype, Facebook Messenger. But what's business travel really about? Well, it's a nice vacation, and then maybe you can hand someone an envelope of money.
What about, like, even go down to Pueblo? I got a phone call this morning from the dental office.
Yeah.
The appointment's been canceled. Probably next one will be too. She'll call me. But I don't even like going down there. I can talk to my doctor over Skype. I'd be happy.
Yeah, that they won't allow stuff like that. Although apparently that is now in vogue. I listened to Trump for a few minutes this morning, and he said the telemedical, I guess, is the term that people are being able to converse with their doctors, you know, through that. So this, I mean, I see some really good patterns coming out of this. Plus, they're showing the air pollution over China dropped like dramatically, you know, when this happened, because so much of the pollution really comes from just, you know, the unnecessary needs of transportation.
Well, also one guy who talked about Phoenix, he hadn't seen the clouds for a long time, because of smog and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, you know, some good things will come out of this, because so much of the movement, I mean, the movement has become a burden for most people, let's be honest. You know, it's not this time. You know, now it's people, you know, like someone says, oh, we gotta go to Denver, and you know, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, it's only 100 miles down the road, you know. 30 years ago, that wasn't seen as a big inconvenience. Now, it's just seen as, you know, dangerous and a huge hassle. But wouldn't it be nice if you could actually travel that 100 miles, you know, to go do something pleasant instead of something you had to do,
Yeah.
you know? I think of the trips I've had to make up to Denver over the last 10 years, which has not been many, but over 50% of them was something could have been handled digitally, you know? Filling out some fucking form for the state, you know, having to hand someone something, and I think that'll go away, and I don't think we'll ever return to those old patterns. So I think that's a good thing that comes out of this. Maybe the awareness too of you know, population density, and how maybe, you know, promoting these sort of, you know, stack and pack downtown areas might not be such a good thing. You know, maybe be smarter to spread it out. I've always thought Pueblo West is a really good model for how I'd like to see cities be, because everybody sort of has their own piece of land. All right, that piece of land, I think they develop a relationship with that piece of land, and they're much more likely to, I don't know, defend it, I guess I would say, have a relationship with it. And then, you know, have little micro shopping centers in there that can provide some of the things that people need. Especially in places like Colorado, we could grow like that. And then, of course, you know, it's very much tied to water, which is fine. We're just going to be tied to water anyway. And I think that would help, you know, reduce gentrification as well, because all these neighborhoods, there's no developing them. You know what I'm saying, John? You can't buy out a poor section of a city and then try to make it attractive for people with money. What do you think on all this?
Well, I think it's a good thing that you know, we realize we're part of the world. We're not immune from that. There's talk about, you know, Canada sitting off the border of Mexico, which I find almost too crazy.
It's kind of funny. Yeah.
We're not so proud now of ourselves, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And but also it's a way for us to take stock what's important in our lives. And another thing is I'm glad that the with the virus and everything, it makes people more attention to their. We have been taught simple things like wash your hands. Why wouldn't you do that anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also in town here, you know, a little bit of history of the water project in it, a little bit. It's nice to see traffic that doesn't have to be going back and forth all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot quieter. I noticed
It's
that.
a lot quieter. Yeah, I noticed on Fraser, there's like almost no traffic, you know, whatsoever. So yeah, this is maybe it's just a good time to be home and take stock of, you know, our civilization, and, you know, how it's been functioning, and you know, my heart really goes out to the small businesses. I was listening to some analysis today. They think most of them are just dead. They don't think they'll be able to come back, and I see that too, because so many of them are just running on the ragged edge anyway. But new businesses will rise. You know, basically, pretty much anybody that can deliver something to a person's home now, they're going to be in pretty good shape. You know? So I think of like someone like Chris, and I think shut down the door and just offer delivery service.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, her one daughter Desiree is 16. She's got a car, and just say, "Yeah, we'll deliver to your house." I bet she could do very well with that, you know, if she offers that service. Because, you know, clearly, as this unfolds, people are going to be less and less willing to leave their homes.
Well, let them have the building.
Yeah, exactly. Have the building.
You want it, 400,000, you can have it.
That's right. Exactly. There you go. It's all yours because I really don't need it anymore. So, you can actually do her level of food prep is fairly low
Really, yeah.
key. She could probably do it out of her own kitchen.
I see more of that happening.
Yeah, I've seen more of that happening too. So, certain businesses, especially ones that have the overhead of a structure, they're going to be in bad shape. But the people who can make the adjustment to starting to provide, goods and maybe possibly services, without that, they might thrive. And of course, that's where people are going to look. This is really going to take the whole digital economy, to its, I think, ultimate conclusion anyway, is, well, I need this done. Well, how are we going to do it? They're going to sell computers to old people now. Mark my words. Mark my words. They're going to be forced to use it. Because a lot of them still don't. It's amazing, like, how many elderly don't have any interaction with that. Because they just figure, well, I've gotten by without it. Do I really need to get into this for the rest of my life? Well, yeah, now you do.
Well, I'm amazed how many people do use it. Something that we have.
And some have, yeah, we've seen, those that have.
Like my brother-in-law, of all people, he's on the computer all the time.
Wow.
His iPhone.
Well, there's a lot of porn.
Oh, yeah.
Don't want to be keeping up with that, I'm sure. So,
That industry has always done well.
always done well, will continue to do well. Absolutely.
What was about that? Almost immediately it was there, right?
Well, that's basically how PayPal started.
That what it was?
It's really strange. Yeah, there was a NASA scientist. He was a numbers cruncher, and then a guy who ran an escort service, but was also starting to sell pornography, through the mail. And he saw that, people wanted to be able to buy pornography anonymously. So this NASA guy said, you figure that out. That's actually pretty simple code. So he set it up that you could pay with your credit card, and then it would just generate like a random fictitious, Joe's Hardware or whatever. So to sort of protect people, who didn't have a complete control over their, financial records. In other words, guys hiding porn from their wives.
Yeah.
And yeah, they became multimillionaires. There's actually a movie made about it, and they ended up kind of being like out of control clowns, and but they made millions and millions and millions of dollars. And when PayPal started to get organized, they looked at that model and they said, well, we need like a third-party payer system to do that, which a lot of people use, and it's a very secure way to pay. I use it all the time. It's much more secure. I don't like having my credit card information floating around out there. Matter of fact, places that force me to do that, more and more I don't do business with, simply because of that. Yeah, so there'll be all sorts of new opportunities that come around in the realm of financialization as well. That's for sure. Short-term loans, John, those got to take off. Those have to, I just don't see how you could fail with that, because there's going to be all these crushing demands on people's budgets, and they're going to be looking for some sort of relief. I don't know what you could collateralize, but I don't know. It's maybe future UBI payments. I don't know. I think that market will ramp up really fucking quick.
I was shocked when they had $1 trillion from come down from the big government in Washington. I was thinking, wow, man, that's really. And then what was astounding to me was, it was like, we have, because it was against that kind of thing. And I said to put money in the consumer's pockets. I'm looking at myself going, yeah, you're damn right, because with this kind of thing going, and of course all these different, hands-off type of thing going, like a city market type of thing, whatever it is. Yeah, you got the people to be able to spend their money, man. They're part of the economy.
Exactly.
And I was delighted and shocked, because I didn't think that they would ever do that. I knew they would have been forced into it.
Yeah.
But
I didn't think they would act this quickly. That seeing the dramatic declines in the stock market, I think they were forced to do something right away. And since this has been on the table, you know, actually as a concept for a long time, I said, well, there's actually some pretty good data to show this is going to work. Let's do this. And we've actually tried it before, you know. Bush sent out some money, I think, in 2001. Everybody got a few $100 or something like that.
That's right, you're right.
You know, Alaska has done it for a long time. So there's been, I think, enough, you know, light experimentation with it to know that it didn't cause a rise in, you know, heroin overdoses or liquor store robberies or anything like that. You know, people just pretty much, you know, used it responsibly to try to pay their bills and other basic needs. So I think that's one of the reasons they feel confident doing it. Of course, you know, what I love out of this is, you know, something I've realized for a long time is the United States can print all the money it wants, all at once. So, and we're in a unique position to do so because so much of the world uses us as, you know, the rate of stabilization. You know, it used to be gold. You know, it's, you know, cryptocurrencies have sort of taken a little slice of that now, but we can do it. You know, and all the arguments that, oh, who's going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? We don't pay for it. We just throw money into the fucking system, which is really what we've been doing, you know, since Civil War. It's just throwing money into the system. And then the system is actually pretty good at doing something worthwhile with it. You know, building ships, munitions, roads, you know, whatever. So that's its job. And as the needs of the people expand, the need to throw money into the system expands.
It changes.
It changes, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it was nice to see, you know, at least some sort of a offering towards working people instead of just an offering, you know, towards the banks and the big industries.
The bailouts.
The bailouts, exactly. So, I think if they hadn't done something, it would have been pitchfork time, and I think they knew that. You know.
Oh, yeah. Cause,
yeah.
That would mean scratch my head.
Oh, that's okay. As long as you haven't touched anything contaminated. Everything here is good. I'm taking this extremely seriously, you know, so I have not been out in the public, and when I do go out in the public, every time I interact with something in public, I wear gloves, I do what I gotta do, and then I get rid of the gloves. So, you have gloves with you, John?
I have gloves.
Okay, cool.
Not with me, I don't have the home.
Okay, well, if you ever need some, I got like 500 gloves here. Somebody told me to stock up before this happened. I did. I don't know, it was weird. I was just, well, they were on sale, but usually I don't buy 500 gloves. Gloves. So, and again, and now, you know, it's getting different messages that maybe the air transmission doesn't last quite so long in some places, and now there's younger people getting sick, and you know, there's one source that I read said there might be 200 to 300, you know, very subtle mutations in this, because it's, you know, essentially it's more akin to a cold than it is a flu. So that's why, you know, cold, nobody has a vaccine against a cold, because they just mutate so quickly. So, yeah, kind of interesting, you know, just on the medical front of how, you know, they're learning more and more about this, and man, it sure seems to be contagious. Fucking hell, you know. I guess Telluride's on lockdown, is what I heard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they had a bunch of the kids came down with it. I was like, Telluride. No hospitals even close. You gotta go to Montrose. That's an hour and a half. You know,
Why is it a medical thing? Why isn't there anything there?
Because it's a rich town, so they don't want. It's like you can't get a flat fixed in Telluride either. You know.
Oh, wow.
So there's no way. You know, so, I've always noticed, man. As soon as like the tire store that can actually repair your tire goes away, you know that place has become gentrified. That's what happened to Breckenridge. When Breckenridge lost their tire shop, I was like, yeah, it's done. Because no average person can afford to live there anymore. So, because, you know, there it's like, oh, we got a flat, well, you call the tow truck. The tow truck hauls it to, you know, some service station 100 miles away. 4 new tires are purchased. Man, that's the end of that. You know, so, nobody's fixing anything. You replace it, for God's sake.
It may be in a lot of these things.
I am too. Yeah, I agree. John, could you throw a couple more pieces of wood on the fire, please?
Yes.
Use the crowbar there to open the door. And then I usually just kneel down on that cushion, and it makes it a lot easier, so you can see what's going on.
Right here?
No, it's on the side, John. And you can use, no, the side. And see, the door opens in that direction. The side of the stove. Go to the side of the stove.
Right here.
You'll see the door and it opens out. No, opens that way.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. And throw a couple of these guys in. Right here, John. It's not self-evident. I thought that was the door too when I got the thing. I thought, who puts a door on the side?
No, mine's on camera.
Well, that's all right. It's not that obvious. Is it going okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. And then just close it all the way. Cool. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Now we can stay comfortable. It's not like you forgot your birthday or anything like that.
No. The book so far.
The book so far is really good. I've enjoyed the character studies. Definitely, Mr. Galloway is what an amazing figure. You know, for him to be as brave as he was, carry a gun around Wilmington, and I just could not help but think back to the Gulag Archipelago. You know, where Solzhenitsyn always says, "Well, if we had risen up, we could have stopped it." Well, the blacks rose up, and the KKK was suppressed for 30 years. That was pretty amazing. I did not think that would be part of the story.
He does say that guy came back. He can't get who that guy was.
Well, sure.
Yeah. And you look at the part where Galloway passed.
Yeah.
On that, you see where they had a bigger page on that Waddell.
Yeah. What a character he was. You know, too weak to continue fighting for the Confederacy, but then he comes back as a politician. And you know, I just thought too, you know, throughout history, the kind of demagogues that are created from failed military service, and you know, Hitler comes to mind, absolutely. So you know, he was gassed. He was not a good soldier apparently. I think he was gassed because he disobeyed orders. That's what happened, you know, and then ended up with that whole period of sympathetic blindness, and then you know, becomes totally radicalized. So, you know, obviously these hits to the ego, you know, when maybe you're expected to perform, makes you want to overperform in a different arena, like, you know, politics. So, I just thought it was typical, you know, that's where the guy went. And, you know, of course, the racism, you know, is pretty shocking there, that, you know, even though you have things like the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, 14th and 15th Amendments, you know, to have a local population still, you know, openly saying, well, that's a nigger convention, you know, instead of, you know, that's a convention for everybody, because it was a convention for everybody. You know, all the people that were part of the franchise, you know, were, you know, invited to participate. And just because there's going to be some black people there, we're not going to go.
And the whites, they like the Plessy versus Ferguson.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You got the right, but it doesn't apply to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Which that's a narrow construction viewpoint of the Supreme Court, which the Supreme Court very much was drifting, you know, towards that. After all the amendments that came out of the Civil War, the court became extremely conservative for about 20 years. And it was actually that conservatism that kind of helped the progressive movement, oddly enough, because they said, well, wait a minute, you know, we don't see any way that the Constitution equates money to a vote, unlike what's happened now with Citizens United. So they looked at these trusts, you know, which is what they called them at the time, you know, and the robber barons, they're basically just large corporations. You know, they viewed that in the same very strict rule, like, okay, you know, what you're attempting to force onto public life is you know, a distortion of how we see the rights and responsibilities of citizenry. So it's very weird how that can, you know, how the racism and the economic populism almost are tied together, you know, during that period. And we see the same thing today, you know, with you know, over just, you know, right out in your face racism, with, you know, the economic populism that goes with it. Well, Yeah, Plessy versus Ferguson. That's a lot of times, brought up as like one of the worst court decisions ever. But it is very much in line with the times. I'm not saying it was a good decision. I think maybe that would have been a good time for the court not to rule. Let the states try to figure this out, and they probably would have. More and more, there would have been pressure, to include participation, on an equal level, because that's kind of how it played out anyway. I mean, even after Plessy versus Ferguson, you still saw, the softening and the weakening of those sort of barriers from the north to the south.
Because the idea was that this has nothing to do with your equal rights. This is based on private ownership.
That's right,
And you could, you're seeing that today. We have the same kind of fight going about private versus what's considered to be public in today's world. And I don't think we've really gone far beyond Plessy versus Ferguson in a lot of ways, as far as the idea that the narrow line that goes down. I'm trying to think of something that happened here recently.
Oh, I can think of something that's net neutrality. How that, clearly the internet has become, a public platform, just like roads and things like that. So to deny access based on money, that's discriminatory. So do we deny access to our roads based on money? Not directly. Anybody's welcome to go walk down that road. Unless it's an interstate, you can't walk alongside the interstate for safety reasons, but everybody's welcome to walk down that road. And why? Because it's part of that, the commons, the public trust. So the same thing, like it used to be very important, make water fountains available, so there'd be access to water, things like that. Of course, some of that has gone away. I've always been kind of proud of Florence that we've made sure that the water fountain at the park works. Fucking A, yeah, absolutely. I remember as a kid, wandering through Boulder, great time growing up, and I never carried a water bottle because I knew where the water fountains were. There were water fountains everywhere. Every public building you could go into, and there'd be a water fountain there. And I just thought that was great. That encouraged a participation, a free kind of participation, and then to see those go away simply because some corporation wants to sell you bottled water, that was sad. That was a loss to have those sort of things. So, but yeah, you're right, John. That there's definitely elements of Plessy versus Ferguson that are still with us. There's no doubt about that. And as I think the world evolves, that gets revisited again and again and again.
Did you what do you think about Wilmington itself?
In a very, very interesting, in my mind, evolution of geography. They just happen to be next to all these pine forests, and we need naval products, and it has a really good harbor. If it had been situated elsewhere, all these blacks wouldn't have come in. I mean, they're willing to uproot their families and go live there for 75 cents to $1 a day wages, doing, really hard fucking work. And that it was very interesting that it was the blacks that were making, the tar and the pitch projects, which really, brought me to that documentary I watched about them making gas in Nigeria, where they're the only ones brave enough to do it. Like, wow. Except I know, like, working with tar and pitch, it's really flammable. And you start making the turpentines and all that, so. Of course, when fires happened, they were just absolutely horrific. So how, the blacks in our country have taken on so much of the really dangerous work. I know in World War II, that was a real big issue. There was even some sort of a riot, I think, at a shipyard in Philadelphia because they were, loading all this live ammo, and it was like really, really fucking dangerous, to do so.
Look at that fame. I don't know what year this was. I'm probably gonna really make. I can't tell the Civil War, what, 1920s, somewhere. There was an explosion in this off this coast of South Carolina. Seeing what they were making now. These women had, and all this chemical they had. I'm gonna look that up. I'm reading about this thing. Mostly poor women.
Yeah.
So there, well, all these chemicals. Something caught a fire and someone dragged or something. All the gas and all the time. I mean, all these women were burned up and everything else. The explosion, right? And you're thinking, well, we're beyond that now. I'm thinking, no, we're not beyond any of that kind of stuff. I mean, we should still read about that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Look where so many of these chemical explosions happen. Louisiana, Texas, things like that. They don't happen in Northern California. They don't happen in the San Diego area generally. They happen, where basically it's a bunch of poor people. Like that book we read. They're willing to risk everything if their cousin has a chance to buy a new truck. They may never see that new truck, but their cousin did. So at least someone in our community made it. It's fucking awful.
Like Louisiana?
Yeah, Louisiana. Yeah. The CUBI could change all of that because then everybody has a different sense of who's made it and who hasn't. There isn't the gut wrenching poverty. That would go away. And you and I have experienced gut wrenching poverty where there just isn't any money, or you're just like you don't know how you're going to face your needs for tomorrow or next week or whatever because there's nothing there. It's a terrible feeling, that really is, and I don't think that's the kind of feeling ultimately that leads to participation. I think that's the kind of feeling that leads to depression and giving up. We're just like, well, fuck it, I didn't make it in society, and there's no place for me to do so. And it's not necessarily a fault of the individual. Things like divorces come along, like in my case, divorce came along. It's an overwhelming, depressing feeling. And I just put myself in that time and think, okay, if I knew I'd have money coming in every month, it'd keep me in the game a lot easier. Instead of like, well, fuck it, I'm going to take my last $20 and go get drunk. So. Yeah, the incentives to work and what you're working towards and what you're working for, I think have shifted significantly. So I mean, during this period, that it's almost unlimited expansion, basically by taking resources out of nature, because there's so much nature to exploit. That's really not the case anymore. Now I think this is one of the ways we have to answer, the environmental decline. Nobody back then thought that way. They're like, well, just go cut down another tree or harvest sap out of another tree because everything's expanding. We're trying to fill in this big country. So the vitality of Wilmington totally surprised me. I had no idea that it was doing that well.
Do you feel like how's participation going to change now in this now during this time of the virus and maybe when I say post, but when it starts becoming more